Welcome, everyone, to the Pick Six Podcast, where we discuss the biggest stories in college football. I'm your host, Chris Chang, and happy Monday, everyone. We have another Victory Monday going on this week. A lot better than last Monday. You know what I'm talking about? The Miami Hurricanes beating the Stanford Cardinal 42-7. What a game it was, guys. It was really, let's be honest with each other, it was the tale of two halves. Miami looking a little slow, flat, kind of a little bit of a carryover from the Louisville game in that first half. If we're giving a game ball to someone, to one player, it's got to be Malachi Toney. He was exceptional this game. Malachi Toney had one rush for 13 yards and had 5 receptions for 52 yards. A lot of those yards, a lot of those plays made at crucial moments to extend drives. I thought he was incredible. Also had an incredible show out on special teams. I am dubbing Malachi Toney Hester 2.0. When he comes on the field, he's electric. You could see from the 2 punts that he returned that he had significant yards even before the punt. The stadium was very electric. You could sense the excitement for having Malachi Toney on the field for punt returns. It was funny. I was actually, before the first punt return, I was wondering. I kept saying to myself, I'm like, why do we still have Malachi Toney on punt returns when we have Keelan Marion, who we brought in from BYU? Sure enough, Malachi Toney proving once again why he needs to be on the field. If we're giving a MVP or game ball to a unit, it's obviously gotta go to the defense. That was very simple, very easy to look at. I mean, when you look at what the defense did, Stanford was holding Gabalderson, the Stanford QB, to 50 yards. Their rushing attack only to 64 yards. I mean, this was literally a dismantling of Stanford, only holding them to 55 yards rushing, 89 yards passing. Again, like I said, the tale of two halves. The Cardinal coming out, trying to look like the Cardinals and maybe tap into that good juju that Louisville had, literally with the same exact color scheme: red helmet with script writing, red pants, white jerseys. Looked like Louisville on that first drive, almost to a T, making sure they got the ball out quick and then hitting the outside. But Miami and Corey Heatherman able to adjust, make the adjustments at halftime, even before halftime, but make the adjustments throughout the game. Really, really shut down that Stanford offense. Miami's offense, well, I mean, we'll get into a little bit more later on in the episode, but Miami's offense still running that inside dive, that inside run at a nauseating rate. I mean, it's kind of getting to the point which we're going to discuss when we break down the offense a little bit. It's getting a little old, tired, and it's actually taking its effect on the fan base. You could see it. What else do I have in my notes here? Loved seeing, Tony Johnson and Joshua Moore get out there, make some key plays, show up on a consistent basis on the offense this past weekend. So that was a great thing. Let's see what else. Oh, how could I forget? The camo unis. I didn't really care for them at first, seeing the pictures of them. I definitely thought they should have gone with maybe a black pant with maybe a camo accent. That would have probably looked a little stronger, but they actually worked. There were several points in the game where I lost track of players because their uniforms actually really were camouflage. They actually blended in so well with the field, which may have, attributed to the 2 interceptions we got. I know that's not the case, but we'll let Adidas take the W on that for the camo jerseys. Few questions we had coming into this game. First one: can Miami play disciplined? I would say yes. We only had 2 offensive false starts. I was a little worried them coming in that first quarter. But Miami only had 5 penalties for 30 yards. Like I said, the other 3 penalties coming on the defensive side of the ball. Still with some false starts, which is a little worrisome. Again, Mario Cristobal, former offensive lineman. I'm expecting linemen to be the most disciplined unit on the team. Still got a little bit of cleaning up, but much, much better than last week. Can Miami prove they're an elite team still? I think yes and kind of no. Again, that first half abysmal, looked really, really ugly. in that first half. But then again, midway through that third quarter, things started clicking. Obviously, Stanford started to get tired and worn down. Um, but again, I think we did look elite. I think when you put 42 points up, you hold another team to 7. You only give them their first drive, which again, this is college football, guys. Everyone's going to have a good first drive for the most part, unless you're really bad or unless the team the team you're playing is elite. Um, Most teams will always in their first 2 drives look a little good, and then you'll start to see that taper off towards the end of the game. Another thing, will the running game and offensive line dominance return? I would say yes. Minus one player, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. I thought, again, watching the game, a friend of mine was asking me, my best friend, he was like, hey, where do you think they were really succeeding on offense? Or where do you think, what were some plays that you thought really changed the game? And if I'm being honest, they're two sides of the same coin. It was the running game. It was just the running game started clicking and the hole started opening up. And I'll attribute that to like the war of attrition, where you just constantly are going to the same spot. You keep hitting the same spot, and eventually they're going to get weak. And that's kind of what basically happened. Um, will we see the highly touted youth come out? Other than Joshua Moore, no. And what I was referring to in that question leading up into this game, will they be utilized more? Again, my hope was that maybe CJ Daniels, Malachi Toney would maybe get the night off a little bit. We would see some more guys like Joshua Moore play a bigger role, maybe get JoJo Trader in there, Nye Carr, some other guys that, I think are really good. They just lack that experience. And I think the Stanford game would have been, and again, had we done what we did midway through the third quarter in the second quarter or earlier in the second, I think that that would have been the case because you did see the second unit come out in the fourth quarter on that last drive on both sides of the ball, by the way, which was nice. So yes and no, we did see some youth come out more on the defensive side of the ball, I would say. Um, Another thing I wanted to see, key playmakers getting rest. No, CJ Daniels, Malachi Toney played almost 3 full quarters, if not 3.5 quarters. We did see Hakeem Mesidor get the night off. Thank God. I don't think he needed to play. I think the defense, like I said, stepped up really well, other than that first drive. And then last question I wanted to see is, can we give our defense a break? Can we get some 3-and-outs? And the answer to that is yes. Stanford was held to just 53 snaps compared to the 63 we had against Louisville and the 77 we had against FSU. Now, a lot of that obviously coming in garbage time towards the end of that FSU game, but I was explaining this to a friend of mine, and I was saying momentum can be measured in 3 ways. It can be measured in quarters, it can be measured in a game, like as a game, and then it can be measured as a season, right? Which are accumulating. And yes, you can build upon those, and each can lead to the next, but sometimes some of them are independent, especially when you get into a slump. So if we go back, let's rewind a few weeks to the FSU game, right? We come out, we look dominant, right? And you could even kind of see the wax and wane. Let's go back as far as Florida then, right? So Florida, we're a little bit of a lull. We get to the fourth quarter, we start peaking, we start scoring. We get that, I think it was like 24-7. I think that was the score. And we're up there, right? Florida State game, we're still up top, we're still riding, right? First 3 quarters, we get that fourth quarter, you start seeing that slump, right? That carried over, I believe, into the Louisville game. And you could see that as the Louisville game went on, we went down. And then it kind of peaked a little bit because we were coming back. But again, not as high as we were when we beat FSU. I think you could see that in that first drive and the first half for the offense for this Stanford game. There was definitely a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but I counted at least 5 drops between Malachi Toney, CJ Daniels, and Keelan Marion. In the first half, again, not sure. Some of them were because players were not in the right spot or weren't positioned physically ready to catch the ball. A lot of them not accurate. We have to talk about the offense. Like I said, the first half abysmal. Carson Beck, highly inaccurate. I'm not sure again if this was jitters left over from last week in the 4 picks or what it may have been. The weather was a little on and off all night, but more second half, the weather was worse. So I'm not sure if Carson Beck and the team play better in the rain as opposed to good weather. But we got to talk about, speaking of Carson Beck, this vanilla plain offense. Again, I'm going to get into some questions in a few minutes that I want to know, and I would pose to you guys. Maybe you guys have an answer, but I don't understand what this vanilla offense is about. Um, I think the playmakers really bailed Carson Beck out. There were some plays that were underthrown or were inaccurate, and the receivers were just able to get good hands on it. I mean, look at the CJ Daniels score, the first touchdown of the game. He literally had to reach behind a wide receiver to get it. There was also a Malachi Toney catch that was a little low and behind him that he was able to like sneak out, because I understand Carson Beck was getting blitzed, and so there was a lot of pressure. But eventually, and again, I'm not sure, because technically, when the field gets smaller, when you get on the opponent's side of the ball, opponent's side of the field, the defenses tend to have an advantage. But you saw in the second half, especially, Miami played the entire third quarter in Stanford side of the field. I don't think there was one drive we started where we were on our own end of the field. So that's really kind of when the passing was clicking. That is when the running game started clicking. Again, is that a halftime adjustment? Is that field placement? Is that field position? I really don't know. Tony Johnson, again, speaking of the offense, was great to see him. 3 receptions for 69 yards, a long of 32. He played phenomenal. I think that was I think in his first reception, I think he got like something like 17 yards or something like that. Really fighting for it, was spinning out of 2 tackles. Again, this is why I want to see either. I mean, Tony Johnson's not a freshman or really that young, but I'll group him into that group, because these are players I would love to see get the ball and get on the field, because they're going to have that tenacity. They're gonna have that energy. They're gonna have those fresh legs to really want to show you that they can be out there. But more importantly, what they may lack in size, they're going to absolutely make up for in athleticism. And so I'm hoping, again, maybe not SMU. I think SMU we're gonna stick to our traditional, lineup, and we're gonna go that. But I would love to see, going into, especially when you're at home against a struggling Syracuse team and a struggling NC State team. I think this is the time, as you prepare for the 2 final road games in the North, in cold weather, and then hopefully, willingly, maybe the ACC championship, because we saw Virginia almost lose it to Chapel Bill. Um, to see us make it in the ACC game, and then at a minimum going into the college football playoffs. I would love to see some of these guys who have not been on the field as much, who are explosive, get reps in, become more familiar, so that when, God forbid, we get into the playoffs, maybe someone's hurt, maybe someone needs to come out, it's not going to be like deer in headlights. Um, we got to talk about, and I'll probably, this is going to be the rest of the show, but it's been my gripe. And if you were there on Saturday, it was the gripe of the fan base. But running the ball inside needs to be retired until the second half. I was watching Steve Kim on Kane's Insight, and he said it best. And he's like, a lot of coaches will talk about, you need to establish the run, and then you open up the offensive playbook. And he was like, no, you need to establish production, then establish the run. And I would agree with him in that sense, when it comes to what we've been showing, what our strengths are, what some of our weaknesses are. Um, we need to get away from this inside run, or at least use it in the right scenarios, mainly second half, right? When teams are already worn down. I think when you also have an issue, I'm going to skip down to my notes. Got to find it. Sorry. So, James Brockermeyer, our center, really needs help. And this is where we kind of saw it again. Stanford has a decent D line, but I wouldn't put them up there with Louisville. I wouldn't put them up there with FSU or UF. And we saw James have a hard time, specifically on that fourth down attempt that he got bullied behind, and we weren't able to convert. Um, we got to retire this. We've got to. I don't understand Mario, or I'm gonna assume it's Mario. I just can't assume Shannon Dawson would see these results and then just keep going back to the woodshed of saying, "Oh, let's keep running it up the middle." Um, I think we need to get to the outside, especially like take for example with Lyle. Like I love Lyle and I think he's great. I just don't think that's where he's best suited. I don't think that's where you're gonna find he's best used and utilized. And we still keep using him to run up the middle. And it's funny when he does break out to the outside, if he sees it's clogged, there's a lot more success. As opposed to gaining 4 yards, he's gaining 7 or even 8 plus. Again, if you're doubling your production by going to the outside, why are we not doing it? You know what I mean? Like I'm at a loss for words because insanity is literally defined as doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Again, this leads me to one of my first questions: is why are we doing this? Is this designed? Like, is this offense is Shannon Dawson's play design for each game? Run at the middle, run at the middle. It's gonna fail for a half, but by the third quarter, we've done it so many times that unless a team is super deep, they're gonna be worn out. I don't know. Again, I don't get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't get paid millions of dollars to coach. I just know what I see. I've watched the game for better part of almost 3 decades. Listen, I wish there was an answer, you know? Um, and I know they're not going to ever give that out. They're never going to say that, especially in season. Um, but it's just something that, again, there were audible boos. Like there were two third down conversions that we tried to make where we ran the ball at the middle, and it was very, very noticeable that the crowd was not happy with the play calling. Um, I think a lot of people know the talent we have, especially the dynamic talent we have. So this isn't like if we were a traditional team that where you just had powerhouse like running backs, like just guys that were ready to run the ball at the middle, fullbacks, your wide receivers not that great at pass blocking, I would absolutely understand if you were like, "Hey, this is our bread and butter. We're going to run up the middle." But when you have players who are speedsters who can get out to the outside and who have proven through jet sweeps and outside runs that they're going to get you at a minimum of 5 yards. I'm not understanding why we don't do this. You know, why are we avoiding running jet sweeps? Like when you have someone like Malachi Toney, and again, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here, but I think if you use it in the right way, it's not. Use Malachi Toney on these jet sweeps if you need to. Use Keelan Marion. That's what he's good at. He's good when you get him in an open field on some one-on-ones. Let him do that. And then on top of that, you have wide receivers who are going to block for you. So it's not like you have to worry about losing the edge or getting pushed back. Like our wide receivers are pretty good at pass blocking, but also run blocking, if need be. And so I would say get bodies out there. Um, and try and get to the outside if possible. Let's get some running back screens. Like here's the thing where I'm going to contradict myself with the Malachi Toney thing. Again, I'm not just saying this offense is vanilla because we keep running it up the middle. That's not it. It's like the same 3 plays. It's like we run up the middle. It's a mesh or a cross route across the middle or a hook, or it's this bubble screen to the outside to Malachi Toney. And it's like, guys, those are your only 3 looks. We've got. I mean, I'm not asking Shannon Dawson to be Gus Malzahn here and to become like a Mad Hatter and draw like some crazy play up, but I think you have to really just create some sort of variance in your offense, especially when it comes to tempo too. I think you have the talent right now to really switch up the tempo. Right? Sometimes go fast, sometimes go slow. Keep defenses on their heels. You know what I mean? And that's why, again, we're now at week 9. Is this part of the plan? Because again, I'm gonna have to believe this is part of the plan because it's either that or it's coaching malpractice. Because you've got players, you've got playmakers who can get to the outside and have speed. If you're doing this because you feel like this is what's going to sustain you into the postseason, then I'm for it. Okay. If you believe you've got the horses to run the long race and that you can wear almost any team down, then I'm for it. The issue you have with that, and it's something that Michigan deals with, is once you get behind, and we saw it against Louisville, got down 14 real quick. This kind of offense is not designed to do that. And again, when we go into the postseason, we are going to face offenses that will easily put up points fast and in a hurry. And you've got to be able to show the variance and the ability to switch it up and say, you know, we're not going to go this way. We're gonna go a little bit more up tempo. We're gonna play a little bit more dynamically. But again, if you haven't done that in the season against opponents that you feel safe doing it against, i.e., your Stanfords, your Syracuse, your NC States. I wouldn't even mind Virginia Tech, because Virginia Tech is kind of a zombie team right now. They've got no head coach. They're a team that kind of is literally in purgatory at this point. They don't know where they're going to go with their program, and they're hurting. You could try it out there, right, on the road. But again, if we don't start introducing this, it's going to catch up to us. And we saw it against Louisville, and trust me, Louisville was not this flash in the pan thing. It wasn't this, anomaly that you can extrapolate the Louisville game to the Notre Dames, the UFs, kind of Florida State to a certain extent, maybe not. Absolutely, obviously to Louisville, and teams can replicate that. Now here is where, again, I love contradicting myself because I like looking at both sides of things. This is where I wonder if it is part of the plan. And this is my evidence for it. I went back, looked at the Louisville game. Miami had 4 interceptions and a ton of costly penalties against Louisville, and they only lost by 3. Okay. It wasn't an outright failure. It wasn't like you got blown out by 2 or 3 scores. You lost by 3. You were able to come back. Now, granted, you were able to come back because you did have to mix it up. You did have to call some more dynamic plays that weren't part of your usual playbook. But again, we saw it was too little too late. I wonder if we had implemented some of these changes that I'm not even saying I am the orchestrator or the person who's bringing this idea up originally. Tons of people are talking about this. And when people I sit with at the games say the same damn thing. The earlier we do it, the better off we'll be, the more dynamic we'll be, the higher rate of success I think we're going to have. Again, I think this was a great win. I think we looked pretty dominant midway through the third quarter, but we're going into a portion of the season where the room for error is 0 to none. Again, Georgia Tech, they're not going to lose. They looked incredible this weekend against Syracuse. Virginia, they look a little human, but we need Louisville to drop one if we want to get into the ACC. Again, the more I sit on it, the more I'm okay with us not playing in the ACC championship, maybe getting that week off, maybe getting that rest, especially, like I said, especially with things like looking at Hakeem Metzador injured right now. Again, he was still on the sideline, so I'm not sure how serious the injury will be. Maybe we'll get him back this week against the Mustangs. Maybe we give him a week off. I don't know, but I can't imagine he's the only one bruised and banged up. So maybe having the ACC game off wouldn't hurt. But again, I also wonder if we do not make these changes, how many people will be able to look at that Louisville tape and say, we can do that, but we can do it better, right? Especially when you get to teams like Ole Miss, you get to teams like, obviously Ohio State, but we won't obviously play them. They're going to get their first week off. But, you get into some of these teams that are still good. Maybe they don't play for their conference championship, but they're still really, really good. They got players. They'll get up and on us real fast in a hurry. I'd like to see how we would respond. Again, love the fact that we also had 2 turnovers, 2 interceptions. That was great. It was very reminiscent of the old school Miami defenses, that dominant defense. Sadly, only 2 sacks. The pressure was good, especially in the second half on Stanford. So it was great to see a lot of, like I said, Armando Blunt, Raul Popo Aguirre, David Blay looked great. Obviously, Xavier Lucas getting that pick. So the defense, again, 0 notes except for that first drive. But again, Something I think Corey Heatherman needs to look at, if I do have one critique, is the flats. Um, gutting us, gutting us on the flats. Tackling looked a little bit better, but still, there's a lot of open space on those flats. So, you know, opposing quarterbacks, quick checkdowns, you throw it out to the running back, you throw it out to a tight end on a hitch, and then bam, it's an easy 4 or 5 yards. And again, you only need 2 of those for a first down. So that's something I think we maybe can tighten up on defense. Any other notes that I have? Nope. Again, great game. I'd like to see us come out a little bit more tightened up and dynamic for SMU. We'll have that preview later on this week. Look out. I mean, again, we had to push this episode to this morning because of the Brian Kelly firing. We're going to get into that a little bit later today, maybe tomorrow, and the ramifications of that. What does that mean for Miami? What does that mean for the SEC? Because that's going to be crazy. You now have UF and LSU open. Crazy, crazy week coming up. Crazy year. I told you guys this on Friday's show. I was like, we are going to see a tsunami of change in college football, and it's going to be really, really wild. Well, guys, we have made it to the end of this weekly recap. Our Canes improved to 6-1. Be good, y'all. Win this week. I will see you guys for another episode. For Brian Kelly, we will see you again on Friday for a preview for the SMU game and all the Week 10 games coming up. Be good, y'all. Have a great day. And as always, go Canes.